Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Mexi here once again, and I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Paper Mario, aka for those of you who live in Japan, Mario Story for the Nintendo 64. So, last time, we essentially did manage able to experiencing the next Peach segment, and as a result, we did somehow ended up during the forms of that particular quiz game of sorts by the forms of the 64th annual quiz-off, and as a result we did somehow win, and as a result we able to actually guarantee to get ourselves not only the Jammy Jelly, but as well as than that, we also got ourselves the most important item for Peach's segment until for later, and that's what appears to be Sneaky Parasol, which we'll discuss more about that if we somehow conclude the next chapter, which as a result, yeah, that's gonna be one of those moments, we'll save that for later. So, in addition to that, we also did manage able to open up that particular treasure chest, as we know, ever since during the forms of by the end of chapter 5, because of the forms of the volcano eruption and stuff like that. Obviously, that was about the fact that when that particular treasure chest did somehow flies out of the volcano, it did somehow crash landed in the forms of one of those sections of the jungle. And as a result, all we got in that particular treasure chest is none other than the volcano vase, which as a result, we have to give it to somebody out there. And as a result, once we're done with that, we're able to actually guarantee to retrieve ourselves the 4th and the final magical seed in order to able to actually progress into the next chapter, which is of course chapter 6. So as a result, and before we get into that though, there's also about the fact that we somehow got interrupted by the forms of yet another battle encounter against with the forms of that familiar foe, which you probably already know what to expect. That's of course Junior Trooper, and that was technically the 4th time we were able to face up against with Junior Trooper, and despite the fact that his health is actually gone decreasing when the actual battle starts due to swimming, which I think I've already on about that since in yesterday, so I don't suppose we're probably not going to mention about this again anyway. So either way, because chances are though is about the fact that we still managed to kick his butt no problem, but it's not going to be until for later and later that we might come across into him again during at some point. So let's not get ahead of ourselves at this point right now, because today, for this video, is that we are about to be taking on some optional stuff first, before we take on the forms of the next chapter, which is of course chapter 6. So, yeah, as you can tell on screen, we somehow going back into Toad Town tunnels, and this time around though, we can now able to explore into some other areas. So as a result though, because you know, ever since that we somehow still got ourselves the Ultra Hammer of course, so this means about the fact that we can now able to actually destroy metal blocks that we've never actually come across into before. Although generally speaking, I was about the fact I know it's been about a couple of hours ago since I actually have last played this game for sure, just because somehow for the fact that, well, let's get the obvious discussions out the way before we discuss upon the forms of some cool details I would like to point out. First of all, is about the fact that, well, today's date of course there is the 23rd of April today, in some cases in 2025 today, so it's only the matter of time for the fact that we've only got about 8 more days to go until we're about to be approaching onto the 5th month, which is of course May. So I don't know if there's going to be anything exciting for the sake of May, apart from the fact that we can able to actually check out not only Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning, the last Mission Impossible film for the sake of the films of Tom Cruise, but as well as from that though is about the fact I might still able to be curious to check out Lilo and Stitch live action movie, despite the fact that, well, I might still wait on that for a while until the actual reviews itself has been up, even though despite the fact I'm getting tired of the films, those live action adaptations of those beloved classic Disney movies in the past, just because, well, you know what I'm saying, they messed up with the actual nostalgia to me, which is especially noticeable concerning for the fact that hand-drawn animation is now dead. So as a result though, which I totally understand they're trying to able to move along to the forms of 3D CGI, which I think they're still doing pretty well in terms of box office anyway, because at the very least, that when it comes to 3D animation, that they obviously get a lot more expressive when it comes to some other films, like for instance though with Moana 2, as well as the films of Encanto, and you get the idea about that. Now I'm sure enough though, with the films of the upcoming Zootopia 2, or Zootropolis 2, if you lived in the European countries, obviously that was about the fact that we were able to actually just to see some more beloved expressions. Like, I can definitely tell the characters are happy, or sad, or cross, and all that stuff, whilst compared to the films of how it does it for the live-action adaptations for some remakes of Disney films, it just feels a bit soulless and lifeless, which I'm gonna say for this point right about now. So, anyway, so as you can tell, that as soon as you're able to try to take care of the forms of some more enemies, if you couldn't tell, and I'm surprised about the fact I forgot to mention about this anyway, but I might as well mention about those right now. Those enemies we already did manage to deal with, these enemies are known as Dog Koopas, which is essentially more accurately an aggressive version of Koopa Troopers for sure. Like for instance though, according to the forms of the status that I've already tunneled through from earlier, basically though, Dog Koopa does have 8 HP, and as far as attack power is concerned, he does have 3 attack power, and finally 2 defense power. So because of that though, they behave almost exactly similar to the forms of how it does it for normal Koopa Troopers, except they do have the special technique by the forms of Dizzy State. So as a result, luckily we still managed able to equip Feeling Fine badge, and as a result we do not get affected on the forms of that particular Dizzy State. So as a result, everything else checks out there. And then as soon as you're able to try to deal with every single Dark Koopas for sure, obviously though we can able to actually activate that blue pipe, or essentially a blue switch, and it will actually cause the blue pipe to appear, and if you couldn't tell, that pretty much leads us to all the way back into Boo Mansion. So luckily we don't have to worry about traversing into the Forever Forest anymore, because obviously though we've already taken care of the majority of the forms of Forever Forest stuff. So either way, oh and by the way, this is going to be the final time we can able to come across into this particular blooper boss, by the way, which as you can tell, this blooper is huge. So either way, let's go do a tunnel right here, and this boss is actually called Super Blooper, because get it, because you know, he was actually huge and everything. So let's check the actual status quickly. He does have whopping 70 HP, and attack power was 5, and lastly defense power was none other than 0. So because of that though, yeah, it might be a perfect opportunity, at least for us anyway, that we can able to try to get the last few star points until we reach our next level up. Because I was assuming if I was trying to go ahead and try to fight against with some more Dark Koopas in order to try to get guaranteed to get ourselves our next level up, but I'm might as well able to, well, have to skip that for now on, so we'll just jump straight into the forms of that particular, you know, Super Blooper battle. So as a result, yeah, basically though is about the fact that, well, it's a good thing we've already equipped Hammer Throw to begin with, ever since the junior forms of the, well, Junior Trooper fights, because as you can tell, the damage output is really good, even with the forms of, you know, Power Plus badge. So either way, and also we can able to tunnel some more enemies, such as the forms of the Blooper Baby, which as a result, they're more likely like a mini versions of the forms of the regular bloopers, but that's besides the point. So anyway, for Blooper Baby, as far as I'm aware, they do have 6 HP, and attack power was 2, and of course 0 defense power. So as a result, good thing we did somehow manage able to use the Star Storm ability for that particular star powers and all that stuff. So logically, not only we can able to do a devastating blow with the forms of those baby bloopers, but also trying to deal with 7 damage for Super Blooper. Now, as soon as when he goes to this state right here, this means about the fact that he will try to attack you twice. So as a result, he will try to kill you instantly if you manage able to not time your blocks perfectly, unless if you decide able to do the easiest way, assuming of course if you do have enough flower points onto your disposal, you're able to actually use Out of Sight with bow, and after a while, yeah, he will try to finish you off like nothing else. Like for instance though, like double the amount of damage, I'm presuming so anyway. So as a result though, he will try to attack you twice. So as a result, that could be very deadly. So yeah, it's a good thing we already switched over to bow for a moment. So just to ensure for the fact that we can able to become transparent and able to try to avoid the most devastating attack, so either way. So, there's also another thing else I would like to explain to you all, is that, well, remember when I mentioned about this in the past? That, you know, ever since the Journey Phones have been sometime in March or something like that, that you've already realized about the fact that I've already got the DVD physical version of Tiny Toon Adventures How I Spend My Vacation, right? Despite the fact it was actually the American copy, which I'm fine with. And actually, as it turns out, that when I tested out on my other device, mainly with the phones of my DVD portable player, made by the phones of Ape Man, I think is what it says anyway, and actually as it turns out, I actually got myself my DVD portable player with, well, Region 3 system, which means about the fact that imagine if I was trying to get myself my glorious American DVD copies at some point in the future, I mean, God knows when. And actually, as it turns out, that my DVD actually works on my DVD portable player, which is pretty cool because I was assuming for a fact I'm almost gonna get myself screwed over, but that's not the case. So as a result, though, that's actually pretty fantastic, all things considered. Although, usually relatively speaking, I was about the fact that way, I can able to watch the film on the go, especially as it's a good thing about the fact that if I was trying to watch on a big screen, like for instance though, if I was trying to boot up my PlayStation 4 for one of those applications, and is especially noticeable with the Xbox One system, at the very least I can able to watch it on the big screen too, so that way I can have multitude of methods of able to watch the coolest summer movie, which even then, I was originally trying to able to also get myself a Goofy movie at some point, because I've also heard it's actually pretty good, especially no wonder why, that I just don't understand why that critics doesn't seem to like it as much as fans as was expected will be. I mean, mind you though, it's about the fact it's been a while since we've mentioned something related to forms of movies and DVDs, Blu-rays, etc, etc, so I digress. So anyway, it's time to go on to out of sight mode once again, so just in case we can able to avoid the devastating attack for Super Blooper. I mean, yeah, he's definitely a lot more challenging, but luckily for me, I'm actually able to try to deal with this fight no problem, especially because again, Power Plus badges are super useful, especially if you're trying to get, you know, trying to find the, upgraded hammer or upgraded boots, and in that way we should able to finish him off no problem. So, and logically, it's a good thing we actually cast the spell right there, so that way it'll do 1 bit of damage, assuming, of course, if you try to block the attack successfully. So, I suppose I have no choice but to, let me just try to use Smack right here, despite the fact that I'm running low in terms of flower points, but that's okay, because it looks like he's almost down. So because of that, though, I think it logically, though, is about the fact that I'm also able to finish him off with a simple jump. And, conveniently enough, that's it. There goes Super Blooper. So this means about the fact that we don't want to get interrupted anymore, and this also means about the fact that we've now reached our next level up. So, and this time around though, I'm gonna go for HP, just because obviously I need to increase not only flower points quite frequently, but also HP points as well, so just in case about the fact that we can able to potentially try to reach certain amount of those specific points. So, anyway, so as you can tell, since that we've already did manage to deal with the Super Blooper, obviously though, much like always, is about the fact that the blue switch has now been shown up, and then once you do manage to activate the blue switch, that obviously once again brings us into, I would classify as saying the final blue pipe, if I can recall correctly, and so much to the point for the fact that it will actually takes us back into, well, conveniently enough, Yoshi Village, in Journey Phones in Chapter 5. But of course, we've already experienced Chapter 5 already, so I don't think we can able to actually go back there for the time being, unless if we're able to actually stumble across into ourselves Choc Quizmo for about quite a few times, but either way, I suppose the actual quizzes is not going to happen anytime soon, unless if we able to focus on story-based related thing first, before we're able to actually decide to do a multitude of stuff at once, ranging from... Actually, I'm generally surprised about the fact that there's one thing I completely forgot to mention about. Ever since around a couple of videos ago, like ever since in Journey Phones by the end of Chapter 4, is that I've noticed about the fact that I'm pretty sure it might be possible you can able to actually tunnel one of those specific objects in Chapter 4 when you try to face off against the General Guy. That's what appears to be the actual light bulb. And as far as I did manage to double check on the actual status of that, it does technically has its own HP, which as a result it does have 8 HP, and attack power is 0 just because obviously the bulb doesn't do physical attacks, and meanwhile when it comes to defense power is obviously 1. So as a result though, that's one thing I surprisingly forgot to mention about. And it's also worth noting for too is about the fact that we accidentally skipped over one of those enemies that you can only find in Chapter 5 when it comes to try to face off against with the Lava Piranha boss fight, and that's what appears to be with the fact that occasionally though, that Lava Bit decides able to actually send out one of those miniature enemies, which appears to be called Petit Piranha, which it does manage to have only 1 HP, and attack power was 6, so that's going to be a lot more aggressive, and meanwhile for defense power was, well, as you expect, 0. So because of that though, yeah, that's the only things I can probably describe about. In terms of the forms of some other enemies that I forgot to mention about when it comes to status and all that stuff, so... But yeah, for the most part, it's about the fact that, as you can tell, I don't think there's going to be any progression for the time being, because as you can tell, certain blocks are actually ridiculously high to reach. But, unless there is actually that particular mysterious wall over there, and as a result, good thing we'll switch over to Bombette and let that wall explode, and that way we can able to actually access to, well, not only this particular stranger guy, that if you do manage to offer him some coins, it actually gives you something rewarding, like for instance yet another star piece. And as well as that though, I think there's going to be another reward we can able to actually try to get, but we're not going to get to that particular point at this point, because obviously if you couldn't tell, I'm almost running low in terms of coins. But luckily we got ourselves an odd key as soon as we're able to actually go for that pipe, and that way we can now able to actually access that particular mini house right there. So as a result, that way we shouldn't have to worry about trying to backtrack for about a couple of times worth noting for. So anyway, there's also another thing else I'd like to explain, back into what I was saying about the films. I was so relieved and also very happy at the same time about the fact that as soon as whenever I, you know, demonstrate with the films of one of those American import DVD that I still got, which is of course Tiny Toon Adventures How I Spend My Vacation, and as a result that was about the fact that luckily, like I said before, it does manage to work really well on my portable DVD player, especially about the fact that what I thought was a little bit odd to me is that it never explains about the forms of what regions it will be accessed to, unless if I discover it for myself. I mean, mind you though, it's about the fact that the image quality looks super darn good, although despite the fact that the actual image display is actually stretched to able to match up the forms of that particular size of it. I mean, it doesn't bother me too much, because after all, unlike the forms of how it does on the digital versions of that particular film in mind, either on the Apple TV device or the Xbox downloads, obviously though the actual picture format, it will obviously be on 4:3 aspect ratio with all these black bars on the sides, so either way. Oh, you kidding me? I was so close to give myself my Mega Quake, because I've heard that badge is going to be pretty useful until specifically for later on, but of course I somehow accidentally spent on that particular thing that I somehow got for that particular star piece, so oh well, I suppose we'll try to grind as many of more coins and join at some point in the next chapter anyway, so oh well, no big deal. But for now on though, as you can tell, we now need to able to give not 1, but 4 magical seeds, so logically though, that's the next destination for trying to able to actually go into the next chapter, which, like I said before, I'm probably not going to do the next chapter just yet until tomorrow, because there's technically one last thing we need to focus on before we're able to actually continue our progress in terms of story, which as a result, yeah, we'll get to more details about that later. So anywho though, and also as far as I'm aware, is about the fact that I'm pretty darn sure for the fact that, well, despite the fact I'm still unfortunately going back on playing Mario Kart Tour again, which as a matter of fact though is about the fact that at least I'm getting some more rubies for the time being, unless if I was trying to save it up for potentially the next unlockable cosmetic character I'm trying to unlock, which, suffice to say though, is going to be for Rosalina for sure, because, well, straight to the point though is about the fact I'm pretty sure I've almost unlocked every single variants of Rosalina as a playable character in Mario Kart Tour. Although, mind you though, until the future years to come, that trying to go back onto Mario Kart Tour nowadays is going to be a little bit more redundant, just because, you know, with the fact that with the new Mario Kart World, that way we can able to actually unlock alternate costumes for certain Mario characters for the sake of Mario Kart World, all thanks to forms of fast food dash, or in some cases food dash items. So yeah, you get the idea about that, and I'm still looking forward to able to actually check that game out for myself once I do able to get myself my, you know, Nintendo Switch 2, of course. So, and as far as I'm aware, I still have no idea if I was trying to get myself my new capture card when it comes to capturing, you know, Nintendo Switch 2 game footage, but then again, we'll try to figure something out on our spare own time, so as a result though, assuming if I need to get the system throughout. So, anyway, let's go ahead and once again try to equip, you know what, we'll go for Sleep Stomp, and as far as I'm aware, I might also try to able to equip, let me think of something here. I need something a little bit more hammer related, so I suppose, Power Bounce will be, it's a little bit tricky, honestly, because, no matter what, though, because, again, that, unlike the Thousand Year Door, you can able to actually go up to 99 badge points, so in here, though, we have to stick with, 30 as minimum, so, or as a maximum, I should say, so, anyway, Sleep Stomp, Power Bounce, and, I suppose we could probably go for, Power Smash as well. So as a result, that way we can able to be all set and done. And it's especially noticeable concerning for the fact that, conveniently enough, we're actually going back into the familiar location ever since in Chapter 1. Although before we get into that though, we need to go ahead and double check on specific badges we do need to able to get. Just before we're able to actually continue things on here. So, suffice to say though, is about the fact that, tell you what though, once we're able to make our way to the final stretch of the game, then obviously though is about the fact that if I do end up missing of those, a couple of star pieces and all that, what have you, then obviously though I can able to look it up on my spare own time, just to ensure of where certain stuff will be at. And also, we can now get the last stand badge, all thanks to Princess Peach, so logically though is about the fact that we can now able to equip it from there. But before we try to take on the next boss, or should I say, the optional boss, which I think suffice to say that the boss fight coming up might actually be the last optional boss in the game, because it's especially noticeable because, well, I suppose we should probably mention more about it later, so I suppose, in terms of the next badge I can possibly try to get, why not? We'll go for Peekaboo, although I'm probably not going to use it for the sake of this playthrough anyway, just because, well, obviously though, I've already did manage able to equip Quick Change, so as a result though, it might not bother me too much when it comes to Quick Change, because if I don't get myself a Quick Change, that'll make things a lot more challenging for us, so... But, yeah, I guess there's nothing else I can really say. In terms of the forms of some, more information about the forms of what's going on, well, actually, as it turns out, is about the fact that until tomorrow, anyway, for US countries, is that they might as well get their opportunity to able to actually now pre-order the Nintendo Switch 2 tomorrow for America. But then again though, you need to act fast, because otherwise though, much like in the UK countries, my god, it actually runs out way too fast. Especially because, well, I totally get it about the fact that they all so desperately want to try out new exclusive titles, but still, it just feels a bit, you know, it feels like a deja vu when it comes to likely, if you look back on 2020 with all that, you know, PS5 as well as Xbox Series X and stuff like that, so, oh gee, it looks like we've come across into a situation right here, which, conveniently enough, we actually meet up with Kent C. Cooper. Sure, he's a lot more bigger than any other Koopas out there. So, yeah, we actually have few choices right here. You can either decide to pay up to whopping 100 coins in order to able to actually get past this point, which I don't have enough. Or if you don't want to pay, then obviously though you can't go into the forms of the Koopa Village, unless if you try to use the pipe to begin with. And on top of all that stuff though, you can also fight against him. So, yeah, we have no choice but to fight, because obviously though, we can able to take him on, because obviously though, we just want to let that somebody wants to get to this point. So yeah, here's the forms the presumably the final optional boss fight right here, called Kenshi Koopa. Now keep that in mind, this boss is going to be pretty tough if you don't know what to do. So in some cases though, in terms of status anyway, much like the forms of how he does it for Super Blooper boss fight, he does have whopping 70 HP, and attack power wise, my god, he has 10 attack power. My god, that's going to be devastating. And meanwhile, when it comes to defense power, he obviously got 6. So yeah, I bet this boss fight is going to be pretty tough, alongside with the forms of some other ones as well, but we're not going to get into more further details on that specific subject. So it's a good thing we somehow managed able to equip the Sleep Stomp right there, despite the sleeping effect is not going to affect it on us. But yeah, look how much damage we took. Well, usually only 3 at the moment, because he forms that Spin Shell. But regardless of such though, let me go ahead and try to jump on him regularly, despite the fact that my Gumario partner just somehow got paralyzed. So, oh god, he's gonna do another attack, isn't he? My lord! That is unbelievable. Well, good thing about the fact that when it comes to the forms of that particular point it's worth noting for is that I've already saved the game just before we got to this point, so yeah, let's try Lullaby, so that way that will work. And sure enough, it works. For about 4 turns. So, unlike the forms of how it does it for Anti-Guy from the likes of Chapter 4, that it doesn't seem to last forever. So, yeah, let's just go ahead and knock him over. Now, here's the thing about this fight though. You would normally think you can able to try to jump onto his stomach in order able to do some bit of damage. Well, it turns out he's pretty much strong defense. So instead of attacking the actual stomach, because there's actually another target you can able to aim at, and that's what appears to be his tail, which as a result, basically though, it actually deals some bit of damage if you try able to attack his tail, which as you can definitely tell, because again, if you accidentally try to jump onto him though, usually on the stomach part, obviously it does nothing. So yeah, it's always have to make sure you have to aim right at its tail. So, and good thing that the actual spell decides to come into play again. But here's the bad news, is that the spell's power is officially stopped. So yeah, I guess we'll have no choice but to spend even more coins with that special course, so oh well, no big deal. And also I could have able to try to finish him off with, you know, the power bounce technique, but oh well, no big deal. I guess we'll have to try this again. Alright, nice. Oh, that's even better. Ah, I could have gone for like 6 or more to hopefully try to finish him off for good. Although, unless if we have lower HP, then obviously though we can able to try to deal with massive amounts of damage onto Kenshi Koopa. So, oh well, no big deal. But still, regardless of such though, I did try my best with all that timing skills and what have you. So, alright, I guess that works for that too. Especially because, after all, he's still asleep, of course. So, either way. No, I did not meant to go onto that stomach part, because yes, his defense is so much more, you know, more than that, I guess. So, hard for me to explain, really, because then again, it's been about a couple of hours. So, anyway, might as well go through refresh right here, so we can able to restore our flower points as usual, especially because hopefully we can able to try to finish him off for good. But yeah, like I said before, there's nothing else I can really say aside from the forms that particular update. I just want to point things out for you guys about how impressive my DVD portable player was now able to play my other regions for any other DVDs as far as this is concerned, which is very impressive, especially because, well, since I've already had myself the Ape Man DVD portable player ever since back in 2018, and I did not know about the fact that that functionality was a thing until now, when I, you know, again, demonstrate with Tiny Toon Adventures how I spend my vacation. So as a result, since that particular DVD works on my DVD portable player, this means no need to get the VHS version, because my goodness, it's really hard to come by to try to get the VHS copy of Tiny Toon Adventures How I Spend My Vacation. movie, at least in the UK anyway, because what I've heard is actually quite rare in comparison to the forms of more common Disney VHS copies for the sake of popular movies during that time period. Like, for instance, though, with Aladdin, and The Lion King especially, Toy Story, and Tarzan, Hercules, etc, etc, but you get the idea for this point. Alongside with the forms of some obscure preschool shows, which I'm probably not going to discuss on those right now, just because I just don't feel like talking about them. So anyway, from now on though, I think I'm also able to sell my Jelly Super, although I was expecting to try to use that during battle, but I will have to be honest here, I think there's going to be a much more superior version than that, once I do manage to get myself not only Jamming Jelly, but alongside with the forms of Ultra Shroom again, because despite the fact that we accidentally wasted our Super Shroom, or should I say the Ultra Shroom, throughout the course of the forms of Chapter 5 in some battles, but let's just say because of how the fact that hopefully though, once we make our way to the final stretch, well, regardless of the forms we're trying to rescue, presumably the 7th and the final Star Spirit as far as this is concerned, because I'm pretty sure that the next Star Spirit we're going to be rescuing for is that I'm pretty sure the next Star Spirit is going to be based off from the actual main menu host from the likes of Mario Party 5, you know, with the fact that it actually carries a book of some sort. So generally speaking, that's as far as I can try to describe it. So anyway, so we've met up with Luigi again, despite the fact he obviously sings a lot while he's actually sitting on the metal block, even though despite the fact that we accidentally destroyed the metal block and anything else with any sort of capacity. So anyway, before we end off here though, let me go ahead and try to explore into this particular part right here, because we can now able to actually swim across the water. So because of that though, unlike the forms of how it does it in the Thousand Year Door, that if you actually ended up in the water, basically though you lose your HP, because otherwise though you get munched by a metal cheap chump of some sort. So whilst in here though, that you don't have to worry about losing your HP if you somehow accidentally dive into the water, because you know, everything else is like pretty much invisible walls basically if you manage to able to go near to the edge of the water. So anyway, there's another super block right here, in case if you're curious, especially that I'm pretty sure we've almost done upgrading everybody when it comes to Partners Department. So because of that though, because it wasn't until specifically for later on that is, that we might able to come across into ourselves, presumably the 8th and the final partner in terms of Paper Mario for the Nintendo 64, because, well, suffice to say though is about the fact that he will be useful one day, especially for one of his attacks is going to be pretty satisfying to boot, so. But anyway, so, and I suppose there's also another thing else I would like to explain is that I'm sure I'll be going back on playing through Sonic Dash at one point again, just to ensure for the fact I will try to unlock the next character, which appears to be Marina Raccoon, based off from Sonic Rush Adventure, so I'm really hoping that she will turn up throughout the course of the forms of that particular event coming up, so yeah, I guess there's nothing else I could really explain about the forms of today's subject at this point, guys. I mean, truth be told though, I was having a pretty darn good day so far, especially because considering for the fact that despite it was pretty slow beginning, because, well, you know what I mean, with all that suffering illnesses, and in addition to that though, with the slowly processing to the hype of Nintendo Switch 2, despite how the fact that most Nintendo fans are still complaining about the price tag, alongside with the forms of some physical games are now going to get much more expensive than the forms of how it does it for regular Switch 1 stuff, which is especially noticeable concerning for the fact that Switch 2 is much more advanced and much more powerful compared to the forms of Switch 1, which I still totally get it, but it's just about the fact at this point in time, folks, it's just about the fact that everything else gets a little bit more complicated in the future. So either way, oh, okay, still 50 coins as per expected, so either way, special course it is, especially because hopefully we can able to guarantee to able to actually get ourselves some more star points and all that stuff if we try to face off against with some more tougher enemies and all that stuff. I'm not entirely sure this is going to be the final time doing this, which is especially noticeable concerning with all that limited amount of time for that particular spell to run out, so presumably speaking, once we make our way to, presumably towards the end game, obviously though, that will be a true definition of the final time to try to able to pay for the amount of that particular spell for able to try to double up our strength, defense, and especially noticeable with, you know, star points, and in addition to getting more coins after the battle ends. So, and I'm still generally surprised that we've never actually shown off any other gamble minigames yet, which is especially noticeable concerning for the fact that I'm trying to save up those coins to try to buy some more, you know, couple of items, badges, and you get the idea for this point. So, either way, I suppose before we end off here though, we need to once again take a nap, just in case we can able to restore our not only star energy, but alongside with HP and FP as well. Usually for heart points and flower points essentially, but still. And, yeah, I guess suffice to say for this point, guys, is that we can suppose we can able to now save the game, and potentially speaking of, we can able to end things off at this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Paper Mario for the Nintendo 64, is that we're about to get started with the films of the next chapter, which appears to be Chapter 6, and suffice to say, we're gonna go into Flower Fields, so this will be surprising, so I'll see you guys until tomorrow. Later, fellas.